This episode of the Managing Madrid podcast is brought to you by Intercontinental San Francisco Hotel. They are presenting their 3 outdoor terraces for your next meeting or event and 2 specialty suites with outdoor space for intimate meetings in San Francisco. Their tented Pacific Terrace is over 5,400 square feet with removable side panels. Terrace 888 is their newest outdoor dining venue, and the Moscone Room and Terrace offer indoor and outdoor options. The Intercontinental San Francisco Hotel is hosting our podcast in the Bay Area. We are coming to San Fran in July. We are also going to be in Las Vegas for the Clásico 2 days before that, and we are recording a podcast in Vegas as well. So if you're going to the Vegas or San Francisco games, would highly encourage you guys to come out to our Managing Madrid podcast in both of those cities. Link to book your spot is in the show notes, and prices go up in July 15th. So I would encourage you guys to do that in the next couple of days to get yourself locked in at an early bird price. So with that being said, tonight's podcast is a analytics focused podcast, tactical patterns and whatnot. We have Mehedi Hassan coming on, so he's going to join me to talk about some tactical patterns that he's observed. And as always, we're going to get started with Ray Hudson and Derek Ray. Let's go.
Nice article in the Managing Madrid blog. Wonderful lads that do a great job there, and worth reading about that man there. Karim Benzema needs to rest, and the numbers reveal why.
Times ended up almost looking like a 6-3-1. Some very good writing about that on the Managing Madrid website. First-rate podcast as well. Of course, Fede Valverde was a huge part of the equation.
All right, welcome to the Monday edition of the Managing Madrid podcast. We're here back to back to back. We did Saturday, Sunday, and now we're doing Monday. And then tomorrow we're doing one on patreon.com/Managing Madrid. We got another one lined up Wednesday for free, and then another one Thursday, patreon.com/Managing Madrid. So we are on full throttle daily here. And tonight we have one of our Managing Madrid staff members, Mehedi Hassan, who obviously you all know by now. He does a lot of great charts and goes through the analytics and is great at graphic design and also tells the whole story, paints the picture with a great article to go with it on Managing Madrid. He's been doing this for a while now. Hasn't been on the podcast for a while, and with regrets, we weren't able to come to Toronto again for a second time this year, so we couldn't get him on stage again. But he was on stage for his Managing Madrid podcast debut in Toronto back in October now, I think it was. So we're welcoming him back. Mehedi Hassan, welcome back to the show. How you doing?
Hey, Kiyan, I'm doing great. It's awesome to be back on the pod once again. Love to be here always, and yeah, looking for an exciting show.
So the reason we have Mehedi on today is because he wrote an article for Managing Madrid called "The 3 Tactical Patterns from Real Madrid's La Liga and Champions League Triumphs." And every time someone writes a great article for Real Madrid, for Managing Madrid about Real Madrid, I like to bring them on the podcast. To be honest, that's pretty much every single day. Everyone puts out great content on the site, so I should be doing this more, and I'm consciously making the effort to do so. So Mehedi outlined 3 tactical patterns that were interesting, and I want to go through them. And the first one is expected threat. So before we go any deeper into that, can you explain to the listeners who might not be familiar with the term expected threat, or XT as it's often referred to? What is expected threat?
Sure. So I have the official definition in front of me as well. I'll read that out. But before that, I just at a very high level, expected threat is just what it sounds like. So many of our listeners might already be familiar with expected goals, where like websites like StatsBomb and Scout, everyone has probably a slightly different definition of how they calculate XG. Is basically what was, and La Liga calls it possibility of a goal or something. They don't like to call it XG. They show it on their telecast nowadays as well. So based on the scorer's position, based on the angle at which the shot was taken, where the goalkeeper was positioned, where the defensive positions were, prior to that shot, we calculate what was the expectancy of that particular goal or that particular shot, and we call that XG. Expected threat is exactly like that, but just whatever happened before the shot or before the goal. So if I read out the exact definition that Soccerman, one of the websites who create these definitions for expected threat, how they like to define it is that this is the concept at the base of an action valuing framework commonly known as expected threat, whose goal is to take a step back from actions such as shots and key passes. As I said, like just before the shot is taken or the goal is scored, the preceding actions, and assign credit to the preceding actions that made them possible in the first place. So if I have to exemplify, suppose I think a good example of this is, remember Toni Kroos's amazing pass to Vinicius against Liverpool at Valdebebas in 2021. So Vinicius's shot had an XG attached to it. What was the expectancy of that goal? But what Toni Kroos created with that pass, that was expected threat. That was XT. The value that Toni Kroos's pass had, it was probably a very low XT pass because it was from way inside his own box. But that preceding action or preceding actions such as this one, it could be a carry, it could be a through ball, it could be a progressive pass, it could be many things, but that has to precede the actual shot or the actual goal. So that is encapsulated as XT. Again, websites like StatsBomb, Scout, and Soccerman itself, where I'm reading the definition from. Each of these websites, they try to have little wrinkles in their own definitions, but in a holistic way, preceding actions that is creating the threat for the goal, and how good or how bad that preceding action was, that's what we call XT.
So with all that being said, a great explanation of what it is, a good primer, good introduction, and there's going to be all these the jargon will continue and will continue to evolve, and we'll get new jargon next season, I'm sure. But it was a good explanation of what expected threat is. And the interesting thing about expected threat in the context of this conversation is, as you outline in the article, the expected threat map in La Liga and Champions League is different for Real Madrid. It looks different. In La Liga, it's more, it hovers more around the left side, where obviously not only Vinicius is, but Benzema hovers a lot and roams to the left side. And in the Champions League, there's a lot symmetry, I guess, is for lack of a better word. It's more symmetrical. The expected threat is more prominent on the right side. So for listeners who haven't read the article, they may guess why that is. But what is the primary difference here?
Well, the primary difference is basically Rodrygo. So as I outlined in the article, Real Madrid's XT or Real Madrid's XG, whatever expected metric we're talking about, it's always going to be heavier on the left-hand side because of Vinicius Jr. and because of Karim Benzema, because if you give Benzema to drift to one side, he will drift to the left-hand side more often than he will probably drift to the right. And from those are the areas where Real Madrid create quality chances. So that's the reason why it's always heavier on the left-hand side. It's always hotter. The heat map is hotter on the left-hand side. And that was expected in La Liga, 38 games over a long period of time. The Real Madrid, coincided on that area on the left-hand side, and XT was greater in that level. But in the Champions League, what happened is Rodrygo played a lot more minutes than Asensio, than what Asensio did than Rodrygo in La Liga. And I think, if I remember correctly, what I outlined is Rodrygo played about 300 minutes than Asensio in the Champions League, and Asensio played about, I think, 500 minutes more than Rodrygo in La Liga. So with Asensio, also, like, he scored, he was our third highest scorer and everything, but he wasn't as involved in creating quality chances, in delivering quality crosses that may have resulted in shots or goals from inside the box. But Rodrygo did that in the Champions League, and some of it we don't even have to go in and look the stats or anything. Like, if we just even try to, like how Peter Drury said, blink it back. In the knockout phase of the Champions League, Rodrygo did a lot. He created a lot of chaos whenever he came in, even probably without his super important goals. So Real Madrid's XT being a bit harder, or we might as well say that significantly harder on the right side when we compare that with our La Liga XT. Rodrygo Go is basically my reason why that it looks different for La Liga and the Champions League.
So, how much of it do you attribute that to Fede Valverde as well? Because obviously he's starting a lot of those games on the right.
Yeah, but I think I have checked. I have to cross check that again, and I'll probably do something. I'll do something about that and managing Madrid soon as well. Fede has played a lot of minutes, but when I'm just speaking from memory because I've seen Fede's progressive carries map on my data and his progressive passing map as well. That is a bit, I would say, between the right half space and the central channel. That is where Fede Valverde has been more penetrative going forward. But when you consider absolute going out wide, hugging the touchline, and even if you see the map again, it's very hard when it's basically touching the sideline there. On those areas, Rodrygo has been the greater initiator of things. But yeah, Fede Valverde has also the counter argument to that could be that Fede has also played a lot of minutes in La Liga as well. But as you can see, that didn't make La Liga's X map that hard on the right hand side because Asensio was there as well. So if I say it like that the pair of Asensio and Fede is not as or has not been as great as the pair of Rodrygo and Fede on the right when they have shared minutes or played together. Fede and Rodrygo have been sharing minutes between them or when they have played together.
So I thought another interesting way of looking at it, and I actually haven't looked that deep into it, and I'd be interested to go a little bit deeper than what I'm about to say on the podcast. But another way I thought you could look at it is, because you look at Rodrygo and Asensio. When you think of Marco Asensio, you think of, well, he's kind of an inverted winger on the right side. He's an attacking player. He's not the type of player you'd expect to be like a defensive player. So why, despite them both being wingers on the right, why does Rodrygo have more prominent expected threat on the right side? In just looking at some of the numbers, if you look at all competitions, they all have almost identical touches overall on the ball. But Rodrygo has a significant amount more at final third than Asensio does. So Rodrygo in about the same amount of minutes in all competitions, over 700 touches in the final third. And Asensio, the same amount of touches, basically about 672. And the dribbles, basically, where I think we can tie to the line-breaking side of things. Rodrygo, 36 completed successful dribbles. Asensio, 20. He's also, and that I haven't looked at much else, just because I don't want to take up too much time on the podcast doing this. I probably should have done it beforehand, but I'd be curious to know, look at some of the other offensive metrics. So I guess the point is, the eye test always told us Rodrygo is more active in line breaking and is not as passive as Asensio. The stats seem to back that up as well in as a whole. If they have the same amount of touches on the ball, Rodrygo does more in the final third than Asensio does, and I think that's part of it too, the expected threat.
Yes.
The second tactical pattern rather, you're talking about defensive actions. So in La Liga, you note that we were a little bit more aggressive in our press. In the Champions League, maybe a little more conservative. And why don't you just explain that part of it as well? I'm curious to know, because a lot of this podcast is just kind of the difference between La Liga and the Champions League, right?
Yes. Yeah. So in La Liga, what we see is, again, the map shows that the team close to their wings and gradually coinciding to the central channels, the team pressed a little higher. Now, when I say press, well, a press is basically you're trying to take the ball away from the opponent and you're trying to engage into a defensive action. I did note the defensive actions as a whole in the article. It has your interceptions, it tackles, ball recoveries, everything for keeping everything intact or everything together. I also included the clearances as well, which I like in a sense. In actual pressing, you probably wouldn't consider clearance as a pressing defensive action, but we had to put it in because we're talking about all defensive actions together. They show us that yes, the team probably was a bit more aggressive with their press in the opponent's half in La Liga, and even in their own half, just the zone 14 that Real Madrid defended, you wouldn't see the heat map being as hot as it would get in the Champions League. And again, I think that is something that backs our eye test, especially what happened during the knockout stages of the Champions League. We did score a lot of late goals, but there was a lot of Hail Mary defending as well, especially against Manchester City. So that actually, again, re-verifies what we saw in the eye test, that in the Champions League, we were a little bit conservative. And another thing, I think what attributed a lot to this is the game against PSG in the first leg. We are pretty much sitting back. We are not getting out of our half that much. And I would say that against Inter Milan as well, in the two group stage games, we let Inter Milan dictate things and we are taking a step back and just trying to hit them in transitions in different phases of the game. So in these three games, compared to how many games we play in a Champions League season, attribute a lot to this kind of a heat map for the defensive actions. But as a whole, again, I think it re-verifies or reaffirms our eye test that we were a touch more conservative in the Champions League with press and overall defensive structure than what we did in La Liga. And fairly so, like probably with all due respect, like the quality of opponents in La Liga throughout the 38 games are probably not as consistent as they are in Champions League. And that is why Carlo Ancelotti probably might have taken that conservative route in the Champions League.
Yeah, basically, the more the season was on the line, the more conservative we got until the tipping point of us going behind and urgently needing to come out of our shell as desperation kicked in. And that's where the aggressiveness flipped. It went from conservative to just full throttle. Let's just beat the shit out of our opponent, which is what happened against PSG in the second leg. It happened Manchester City after minute 90 and into extra time. And then basically, I've said this so many times, the Chelsea one was the hardest one. The second leg against Chelsea, that was truly difficult. And really, with the Modric outside the boot pass, the brilliant Rodrygo finish flipped it. So it's interesting that conservatism ultimately did win us the Champions League in a way, but it also didn't, because it was when we flipped to the aggressive mode is when we truly submitted our opponents. But I also don't know if we were to have gone aggressive from the start, it would have been really difficult to sustain it, because Ancelotti kept saying the reason we were able to do this and flip it at the end was because our opponent pressed us for so long. We sat back, we absorbed it, and we conserved energy, and they ran out of gas, and then we brought on the subs, and then that's what enabled us to be more aggressive later on in the tie. And this actually ties into your third pattern, which is expected goals and expected goals against, although you did it through a trend line, and you didn't necessarily look at it for game, although you did include in your analysis explanations for certain spikes in La Liga, for example, the 4-0 Clásico loss and the game against Sevilla. And I don't know if you mentioned this specifically, although possibly another part of the trend is that, we also started to put our B team towards the end, although I don't even know if the B team actually held their own pretty well, to be honest. So I don't even know how much they spiked in anyway. But so this also, there's a difference between La Liga and the Champions League and our expected goals differential. Can you explain that part?
Yeah, sure. So This was basically there was actually I read a comment on the article where this part
Very
was
angry man
criticized, saying
in the
that,
comments. Yeah, I saw that today.
yeah, but he actually, like, what he said, he himself explained what the motive behind what I did what I did. So there was nothing more to add. He explained himself. So this in fact was like a high level summary of our XG and XA. If I had to go break down against better opponents, against weaker opponents, and all that. That could be one thing as well, but that wasn't the goal. The goal was what it looks like, and he actually explained it himself. Anyways, to explain that, what my main motive was to show here that in La Liga, we maintained a healthy differential pretty much throughout the season. We know that, like, probably after the Super Copa, our performance went down a bit, and I myself was one of those guys who was like furious with almost everything Ancelotti was doing. But despite that, when we will look back at this particular La Liga, championship in a few years, we will get to understand that how dominant it actually was, regardless of how weak Atletico or Barcelona or whoever was. I don't think, even if they were better, we would still end up winning this particular league title. It was that dominant throughout, if we now look back. But yes, after that particular stage, after the Super Copa, our performance went down a little bit. Exit from the Copa del Rey also punctured the team a little bit. The team went morally, the team went down a little bit, and that's when the opponents started to catch up. They started creating more chances. They started generating a higher XG towards the last phase of the season. But if you see, I think if we see the picture from around La Liga match day 20 to around La Liga match day 27, that was a phase where we really dominated. There was a huge gap always between the XG against us and the that we generated. And the last few weeks, after we have won the league, it was pretty chaotic. We were generating loads of chances. The opponent was generating loads of chances when basically Ancelotti rolled out the B team. That was pretty much about from La Liga. The trend was healthy throughout in La Liga. In the Champions League, it was again whatever we saw in the Champions League, we can see here as well. It was chaotic from game one. I think when we lost to Sheriff in that game, although Sheriff scored 2 goals, I think our XG was pretty high because we, I think, generated 50 million chances in that game, but couldn't really score much. Again, into the round of 16, first leg, obviously PSG was the better team. They created loads of opportunities. You can see that here. The quarterfinals against Chelsea, in the second leg, Chelsea created so much more than us, and in the final as well, Liverpool created more opportunities, but we held our own, and whatever XG we produced, we capitalized on that and we scored, and that's actually what mattered in the end.
Yeah, this one actually I feel like is the most straightforward of the 3 tactical trends that you've outlined, because we all saw it, and we all are kind of aware of the stats that in La Liga we dominated, and in the Champions League the margin of error was far less because the opponents were way better. And you had a line in there that I actually really loved, and I just wanted to highlight here. So I just want to bring it up and just read it verbatim. So you said, there have been plenty of matches where the opponent outnumbered the eventual champions in terms of creating quality chances. However, you can't knock Real Madrid out of the Champions League with just great chances. You have to bury this team to knock the wind out of their sails in Europe. So that's true. I mean, taking down Real Madrid is more complex than just outperforming or having a higher XG than them. It's you're dealing with a different psychological beast and a different beast altogether. And I think that was it was a good way of putting it. I think it's interesting because when you look at the league, we were so critical, and by we I mean honestly, as a collective fan base, but me included, so critical of Ancelotti, and it really peaked after the Clásico loss at the Bernabeu. When you zoom out and look at the whole thing, as much as we can complain about some of the football was boring and all this, and maybe if the league was better, etc., it was pure domination from start to finish. I mean, there was the spike that you mentioned where the trend line headed north, but we conceded just 31 goals. The only team that conceded less was Sevilla, who conceded 30. So they conceded 1 goal less than us, but the difference is we scored a whopping 27 more goals than them. The goal differential by the end of it was a whopping 49. We created far and away the most chances in the league. I mean, it really was domination. And no matter how much you spin it, and people complaining about our summer so far, like, look, we just won the double and we added 2 players who are going to upgrade the squad that are incredible. And I think after this, what happens is a little bit of bonus to an extent. I'm not saying it can't be upgraded further, but certainly I'm not too worried about the general direction we're headed in, because there was domination. The numbers back it up. Mehedi, any concluding thoughts?
The concluding thought would just piggyback off the thing you said about what I wrote. Is I've been reading this book of it's basically a mixed bag of a lot of Ancelotti memories. The book called Quiet Leadership. Ancelotti and some of the other authors wrote it. So that was written before he took on Bayern Munich. He had already been sacked by Real Madrid once by that time. But how he speaks about a family environment within the team, you can actually now see that at Real Madrid. It was at Real Madrid before as well when he was around, and you can't just beat that with great tactics. Like we can all have our own tactical perceptions and preferences, but at the end of the day, it's a sport played by humans, and the humane sides is going to be a part of it, whether we like it or not. And Ancelotti, like, what he does is kind of, if Zidane's thing was black magic, I don't know what we should call this. It's white magic or something. But he really values this family environment where people, gel in like a family, from the kitman to the captain to the coach to the president, everyone. He speaks very highly of that he had that in Milan. He speaks very, very highly of Real Madrid in that as well. So now when I'm going through the book, it's retrospectively and looking back at the season, now it all makes sense that we were actually destined to win these things anyway, because once Ancelotti creates that kind of unit and everyone is working towards a collective goal, it's really difficult to beat any football team like that anyways. But if the team is Real Madrid, that's even more so, even more difficult.
Ancelotti's quiet leadership is apt. I mean, what a great title for a book, by the way. Like, it's just so it encompasses everything, everything.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's all true. It's been proven true, and for now the team is unified, and we hope it stays unified for a long time. Mehedi, thanks, man. You can follow Mehedi over on @MHassanFootball, and also he runs a site for Madridistas in Bengali for fans in Bangladesh, and it's called Madrid Betar, and you can read his work on managing Madrid pretty much weekly now, so you can go over and follow him on the site, on Twitter, wherever. Thanks, Mehedi. Appreciate your time, my friend.
Thanks, Kiyan. Love to be here.
All right, before we wrap it up, we wanted to give a shout out to our patrons over on patreon.com/managingmadrid. They do so much to support this show and make it possible. And we wanted to give a specific shout out to our $10 plus patrons, because if you pledge $10 or more, not only do you get guaranteed responses to your questions, but you also get a specific shout out on the podcast. So shout out to Brandon Alvarez, Willie Reed, Wei Pairing, Wamik Jamal, Umar Mahadi, Tyler Simon, Tobias Arroyo Botcher, Tariq Goktas, Talib Salhab, Tahmid Kalam, Sushank Damala, Sujai Wani, Sumanchu Singh, Shivam Tiwari, Sherry Sorial, Sheikh Hatiri, Shamil, Shabaz Sharipov, Sergio Arispe, Santos Solorzano, Samir Z, Said Mahad, Sai Mohan Sassel Kumar, Rodrygo Balmaceda, Rishi D, Phoenix, Peter Powell, Paulo Fierro, Patrick Udaifari, Oscar Barrera, Nico Laxo, Nicholas Zapatero Zubiare, Nicholas Moeller, Nick Ribeiro, Nelson Masariego, Muxi Thangal, Mowgli, MJ Diego, Michael Zinberg, Marin Myrtle, Martin Ridman, Logan Stahl, Leon Stavronakis, Kunal Tilakar, Crystal Glass, Kevin Rivera, Jose Cruz, John Fernandez, Jason Fitz, Ian Marley, Graham Gerard, Gary Kohut, Frederick Antakiro, Frederick Sundros, Faisal Hamdan, S.A. Davisito, Eloy Enriquez, Edward Sossman, Daniel Williams, Christian Toft, Christian Acosta, Charles Williams, Brendan Powers, Brandon Stevens, Ashik Bashar, Armin Gashi, Armando L, Anton Zwardenko, Anirudh Singh, Alexi Steniseros, Al, Azaz Hussein, Adrian Rios, Adar Zalukovic, Adam Dorsey, Bella Chow, Barun, Ramtin, Mahrur, Fabian Moreno, and Daniel Smith. Love you guys all. Take care and Hala Madrid.